We're dynamite.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Masters of Boogaloo, the podcast show that looks at the schlocking world of canon films. I'm your host, Aaron M. Lambert, and with me, of course, he is the Golan to my Globus.
Kyle Patrick Murphy here.
All right, we got a good episode today, don't we? I've been waiting to do this episode since we started this podcast.
Oh, you have?
Yes. We are going to talk about one of the epitome canon films, the one that's still remembered to this day, 1987's epic Masters of the Universe. That's right, the He-Man movie they produced in 87 that was supposed to save the company and unfortunately did not. And I got a bit of a confession to make. I'm gonna come clean about this. I'm going to get on my soapbox and announce to the world, I love this movie. I seriously love this movie, and anybody who knows me knows I love this movie, and I defend it tooth and nail that it is, in fact, a good movie. I'm aware of the problems. There are a lot of them, and but I really don't think that it's worth calling it a bad movie over. I think it's a movie that had a lot of bad things happen to it, but that's almost every canon movie out there. This was a very big movie for me growing up. There was two canon movies that were very important to my formative years. It was Masters of the Universe and the other one I'll talk about in another show. I'll keep it a secret for
I know
now.
what it is.
Yes, you know what it is, but don't spoil it, because we will get to that movie where I will get on my soapbox again, but defend it for different reasons. This movie, as I said, came out in 1987, and it was supposed to be the movie that helped save the company. Am I right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be.
Yeah, 1987, we saw Over the Top. That was supposed to save the company. We've talked about Over the Top before. We saw Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and we had Masters of the Universe, and it was supposed to be the year of canon because they were going through their biggest financial difficulties at the time, and they needed these movies to help save the company, and unfortunately, did not happen.
Not so much.
No. But does that make Masters of the Universe a bad movie?
No.
Like in your opinion, do you consider it a bad movie?
Do I consider it a bad movie? No. I mean, compared to... let's compare... it is an action figure-based movie, and considering...
The first one,
and considering we've had some bad action figure and board-based movies board game-based movies since then... I'm sorry, I'd rather watch Masters of the Universe over Ouija and Transformers and G.I. Joe Rise of the Cobra.
Toys and board games are so in now. They're, I wouldn't say as big as comic book movies, but they're trying to capture the same.
They're making a movie based on trolls.
It's the geek culture they're trying to take on, and Masters of the Universe was the first, I guess, action figure movie based on... there was the animated series that was very popular in the early 80s.
And there was the animated film, I think it was like He-Man and She-Ra, Secret of the Sword.
Yeah, and they also had like Christmas specials and stuff like that.
Special.
And I got to tell you, growing up, I liked the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon. As a younger viewer, I liked it. But I got to tell you, my access to He-Man was always this movie.
Yeah.
It was this, and I had a couple of those golden books or read-along books or whatever that had Masters of the Universe. I also had a couple of comics. I had the toys.
Yeah.
To say that it's such a bad movie, which most people do, it's such a bad movie, and yet I'm constantly seeing people ripping it off.
Exactly.
To this day, a lot of people just take inspiration from this movie. I'm like, and if it's such a bad flick... Well, why are you even bothering?
If it's such a bad movie, then how come when I was sitting in the movie theater watching Thor, the first Thor movie, all I could think of is, wow, this is a high-budget Masters of the Universe.
Pretty much. It was Masters of the Universe done on a budget it was supposed to be done under. Maybe not as high, considering 80s dollars versus now.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said about this movie. Basic plot is it's a good versus evil story. You have Skeletor who succeeds in taking over Castle Grayskull, and this is like the first 5 minutes of the movie. He's won, which I like in regards to watching the cartoon episodes where it was always they were very formula. It was there's He-Man, there's Skeletor. Skeletor's trying to take over the world or take over Castle Grayskull, Eternia, what have you. He-Man stops him. The end. We'll win to fight you another day. I'll get you next time, He-Man.
I'll get you next time, Gadget.
So you start off this movie, and he's won. He's done that. He's taken over Eternia. He's taken over Castle Grayskull. He's got the Sorceress of Grayskull, who's pretty much, I guess, a god to the Eternians.
Yeah.
She's in his power field. He's sucking her energy. He's about to become ruler of the universe. Then you got He-Man, who's leading a band of rebel, I guess, warriors, a little bit like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because you got Tila, you got Man-at-Arms. They're trying to stop Skeletor. They come across an inventor, Willowdor, who creates a cosmic key. And with this cosmic key, they travel to Earth. Again, here's the problem with the movie that a lot of people have with it. And I guess I do to some degree, too. So on Earth, they lose the cosmic key to get back to Eternia. They have to find it before Skeletor does. And then when they get back to Eternia, pretty much ending of he saves the day.
Yeah.
He saves Grayskull, defeats Skeletor. The end. Good journey. So with that,
again, you said that so eloquently.
Well, yeah, you know, hey, you gotta
eloquently.
You gotta go through these movies so people know what you're talking about. But I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you know what we're talking about.
I think if you've seen any of the amount of like '80s resurgence lately, you've at least heard about Masters of the Universe once.
And it's either like that movie that was so bad it's good, or just so bad it's bad.
Well, that was normal for science fiction fantasy movies of the 80s. I mean, look at Last Starfighter.
Right.
Kid from Earth goes to space and, defeats the bad alien race, and that was the first use of CGI in a film. Or one of the first major uses. There were a few usages before that, but you had that, you had Krull, you had, what else? Willow. It was a
fad.
It was a big thing to do fantasy movies with kind of an 80s.
With, with Labyrinth.
Yeah, Labyrinth. And everything like that. And it's just like, to call this movie out and say, oh, it's bad. It's like, it's not a bad movie at all compared, considering
that
the source material.
You're talking about a time where so many people have confidence in properties. You take a He-Man movie today, it would probably gross, $500 million at least.
Depends on who's directing it. We will get to that later.
But the fact that, it was so kind of different in the 80s, like it wasn't really a thing that's done, and you're talking about an action movie, and action movies were at this time pretty much guns and explosions and Stallone, Schwarzenegger kind of territory, and this one is kind of trying to represent a superhero that would play to both kids and adults. And a lot with what went wrong with this movie, and I'm not saying that things didn't go wrong, everything went wrong with this movie, had to do with its production. It had a very troubled production.
It was basically Mattel said, all right, we want to make this movie with you, Canon. Okay. Canon's like, okay, you put up the money first. Okay. Mattel puts up the money first. Okay, they ran through that quickly. Okay, Canon, we need some money now. No, you pay for it.
Yeah, I think they had a deal where it was kind of like a half and half. You pay half, I'll pay the other half, and end up being Mattel paying for the whole thing. Which really kind of confuses me, because wasn't Canon the ones who were so skilled at taking checks from other studios to produce movies and then spanning them over all their projects?
Well, at one point, Universal was interested in this movie.
And I'm wondering what would have happened if you had a juggernaut like Universal backing this movie.
It probably would have been more, because if you think about what Universal was putting out at the time, they were, if you really, and the one fantasy film I know from them / science fiction was Last Starfighter. They probably would have done something. They probably would have done something just like the cartoon. Which I will say this. One of the great things about this movie is you never hear this whole, it doesn't go from, Prince Adam to He-Man. No, it's He-Man the entire movie.
Well, one of the misconceptions I think everybody has with this movie, especially when it came out, was everyone was expecting a live-action version of the cartoon. Edward Pressman, the executive producer on this, who actually obtained the rights to the character He-Man to adapt to a film, said he was interested in the product before the cartoon even came out, when it was just a toy. And when it was just a toy, there was no Prince Adams.
Yeah.
There was no, monarchy of anything.
Yeah.
He-Man was a barbarian. He was pretty much Conan in a technologically advanced universe.
Pretty much. And, the one, it's like, everybody has this, fond memory. I mean, I didn't grow up with a cartoon. This is the only... I remember seeing the movie when I was, younger, and that was it. And, I remember they tried rebooting the franchise.
Oh, sure, a couple times.
With a new cartoon and everything like that, and now they're trying to reboot the franchise again, which, again, we'll get into a little bit later. But, it's one of those things, it's I'm kind of glad they didn't follow the cartoon series exactly, because I've seen the cartoon series, and I don't exactly... I don't see how that would have worked, especially with Orko.
Well, but like I said, they needed this. They needed this movie to hit, and they needed to hit big. Also, so did Mattel, because at this time, when they were developing it, probably in '86 or whatever, you could argue that He-Man was at the height of his popularity. By the time they got around to filming it, and eventually the film getting released, He-Man was on a huge downward spiral. The sales for the cartoon weren't happening, or the sales for the toys weren't happening. The ratings for the cartoons were pretty much gone. I think they had canceled it by this time anyway. So you had a lot of people, careers riding on this movie for it to hit big. So you got the pressure of that. Poor director Gary Goddard had his hands tied with this thing, because you had. You had stipulations like that, two companies who needed this to happen, the money wasn't there, and he was dealt with a directive of, you have to do He-Man on Earth, which is the single biggest problem with this movie, is it is He-Man on Earth, because they couldn't afford to film the entire thing in Eternia. And a lot of people have issue with that, because they're like, it's He-Man, he should be in Eternia.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, the Earth angle, it wasn't anything new.
No.
And especially, that is one of the faults of the movie, is because it goes from, Eternia, this great fantasy land, to then 1980s New Jersey with Courtney Cox.
Yeah.
But at the same, and then you got, but at the same time, Courtney Cox is not that bad in this movie. No, she isn't at all. You would expect, oh man, this is going to be, she's going to be terrible in this movie. No, she actually does a pretty good job with the material. It's
considering how... I think one of the things I like most about this movie, like any kind of movie with material that can easily be taken over the top, or too silly, or too campy, and it's one of the things that Richard Donner got right with the first Superman, is no matter what the material is, as long as the actors play it straight, it'll be fine, and it'll stand on its own. And that's what they do in this movie. Every actor plays it 100% straight. Courtney Cox being one of them. Yeah. She, for her first film, she did a great job.
I don't know, though. James Tolkien looks like he's having a blast with this movie.
James Tolkien looks like he's just kind of taken Principal Strickland and turning him into a cop. It's like, what would happen if you gave Principal Strickland a shotgun, which he ended up getting in Back to the Future 2 anyway, so we know exactly what would happen after seeing Detective Lubick in Masters of the Universe. But you know what? That's the kind of James Tolkien performance you get. You get the hard-headed, angry, slacker-calling, tough guy.
He-Man, you slacker!
I know, you should have called He-Man a slacker. And, he's got some of the great lines. He has great lines in this movie, though. Nobody takes pot shots at Lubick. I'm going to turn that into a t-shirt one day. I love it.
It's just, it's Principal Strickland with a gun and a badge.
I mean, he's pretty much the character from the Earth side who, he's the non-believer, I guess you would say. He's the one who's like...
But by the end of the movie, he's chilling back on Eternia with some ladies. Yeah, I'm going to retire here. You guys go home.
Right, I got a princess, I got a castle, I got a beautiful woman. Yeah. No, yeah, he makes out well. But, again, something that goes to the directives of making this movie in terms of the production side, one thing that they had to have, and that was Dolph Lundgren as He-Man. In his second movie role, this is right after Rocky IV, and he made it big as Ivan Drago, he had to be He-Man. That was the deal. Golan and Globus said to director Gary Goddard, you're going to make He-Man, but you must make it with Dolph Lundgren, who didn't speak a lick of English, and you can tell throughout this entire movie. He was struggling. You could tell he was heavily looped. Like, they didn't use any raw audio from the days that he ADR'd every line. And this was very interesting. I found out that Gary Goddard actually brought in other actors to replace his voice. And there was one guy, he didn't say who, but one guy was so spot on. But Menachem was insistent, it must be Dolph. We paid for Dolph. But Dolph couldn't speak English.
Yeah, but
you couldn't understand him.
Yeah, but that's kind of, builds to the credibility of the movie because, when you're from a land called Eternia, don't you think, at least one of your characters would have kind of a spacely accent?
I mean, I guess it does.
And also, here's the bigger question I had. Okay, putting all the jokes aside about his voice and everything like that, his physique was perfect for that role.
No, he looked great.
But the question I asked is this. Who in the hell would have played him otherwise?
I couldn't tell you. I think they actually asked Stallone to do it, but he's like...
Stallone?
Yeah, I think they had no shame about asking anybody to do anything. I'm sure they would have asked Stallone to be the monkey.
I have the power! Now I sound like Goldar from the Mighty Morphin
I was about to say, that was more Goldar.
But, no, it's like who would play Arnold?
No, yeah, like they could ever afford Arnold. I mean, they had to shell out $12 million to Stallone.
Now why are you so important to Skeletor?
Boy, your impressions you're throwing them right at me today. Jeez.
But it leads to my point. I mean, but it's like who else could? I mean, and then of course the highlight of the movie. It isn't Dolph. It isn't James Tolkien. It isn't Courtney Cox. It's Frank Langella as Skeletor.
Who steals the frickin' movie, and deservedly so, because you could tell the weight of the movie was on his shoulders, considering you had Dolph, who was, very stilted, very stiff.
Yeah.
And, you could tell Frank Langella just picked up the ball and ran. And you can tell he's having a blast with it, too.
Yeah.
He is...
The universe's power!
So seamlessly into this movie. It's unbelievable. That's another T-shirt I'm gonna make, by the way.
The universe's power.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing about Frank Langella, like in post interviews, he's like, "That's my favorite role, man," because he did that for his kid. Like you're playing the bad guy. I mean, imagine having a kid at home and it's like, you're playing the bad guy in a Masters of the Universe movie. That's cool. It's not like the story I heard about Dennis Hopper in Super Mario Brothers. His son asked him, "Why did you do Super Mario Brothers?" "Well, you needed a new pair of shoes." "Dad, I didn't need a new pair of shoes that bad."
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a paycheck, sometimes it's, to make their kids happy, but, at least Frank Langella he showed up and he was there to work, and he did. And you can tell how... I've never seen him do a performance like this before or since either. This is like a gem in his filmography because...
Better than Dracula, man.
Yeah, exactly. He's playing it like it's almost like an opera role or a Shakespearean role.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't be too big, he can't be too small. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people criticize his makeup job in this movie, which I'll admit isn't perfect, isn't great. It is essentially a rubber mask.
But it's still Skeletor.
It's Skeletor, so how much you're going to get out of it? It's a skull face. And they were wise enough to keep his eyes visible, and you can see a lot of things happening in his eyes. And as an actor, it's very liberating to do what they call mask acting, to where your face is covered, to where you can pretty much go and do whatever you need to get the job done. And you can tell he's having a blast with this role. And
exactly.
And as a viewer, you have a blast watching him. You're almost more into Skeletor than you are into He-Man.
Well, that's because he's really the main part of the movie. Like,
exactly.
He-Man may have top billing, but it's Skeletor's movie.
But you know what? That's the problem with most people with this movie. They're like, it's not even a He-Man movie. It's like, well, what do you expect? You had a He-Man who can't speak English. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. So how is he supposed to carry...
I've been looking for you.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Jeez.
You're never gonna. You're really gonna get sick of my impressions quick, aren't you?
I mean, you can at least do a good one.
Okay, then let me hear your Dolph Lundgren impression.
I'm not gonna sit here and do an impression.
Come on.
We're here to talk about Masters.
Okay, do your Frank Langella impression.
No, we are. The universe is power.
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Now we're even.
Yeah, fine.
You know, least you could do is give me a damn impression every
Well,
once in a while. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm very happy now.
Yeah.
I'll stop doing them now.
Thank you.
But I mean, it's a fun. I mean, nowadays, also the one thing I like about this movie, everything it looks real. It's not a CGI fest as it would be now, and that's why I love films from the '80s to a certain extent. Everything had to be handmade. You know, I mean, yeah, there were computer effects, there was optical effects, but like everything, like the suits, and even like that. One of the cool scenes in the movie is that whole glider.
Oh yeah.
Scene.
Yeah.
That's an awesome sequence.
Compared to some of the canon films out there, I'll even dare say most, this one is more polished.
Oh, yeah.
And you can tell that they used their $33 million and they spread it out, but put it in places where it needed it.
Yeah, especially the special effects department, because some of the effects in this movie are really good.
I won't say they hold up to today's standards, but to that...
Yeah, to that period. I always judge it by that period.
Right.
And there were some fantasy movies where the special effects were just god awful.
Right.
Even ones that people see hold high so highly. Kind. I won't name any names, but.
But yeah, they definitely used their budget to their advantage. Considering there was practically no budget, I mean, I've heard stories on this movie where they literally shut them down. Like they
just put a card in front of the things like
you're done.
We'll just fade out. It's like that's not how the movies work.
You can't fade out during the big epic climax.
Although, could you imagine if they pulled a Buckaroo Banzai? They do the Clash and it says, "Look out for He-Man's next adventure."
Oh my god! Yeah, or like He-Man will return in He-Man 2. Yeah, that would have been terrible. That'd be banking on a sequel even more so than
He-Man against the World Crime League.
Yeah. Yeah, this
it's one of those things where it's a movie of its time. Like if you think 80s cheese, you're going to think canon. That's why we're doing this show.
Exactly.
And the thing about Masters Universe is it doesn't really seem like 80s cheese. It seems like just, a nice little 80s fantasy adventure movie, which the 80s was full of.
Right.
Especially in the wake of Star Wars. I mean, you had Flash Gordon, Krull, Willow.
And then you got Canon's Hercules movies.
Yeah, the Hercules movies, which we'll talk about eventually.
But I mean, I'm like, and that's more or less my point, comparing Masters of the Universe to those.
Oh yeah.
I don't think Masters of the Universe is that bad.
No.
You have a movie that
compared to Superman 4.
Yeah,
this one is way.
It's a good movie because I watch it now, however many years, almost 30 years now later, and I can still I can still enjoy it for a movie that is essentially He-Man on a budget. I mean that's what the order was. It's He-Man on a budget. And
But $33 million seems a lot budget. Especially for that time. Is that the actual budget of the movie?
It was something like that.
I thought it was like $17 million.
It could have been $17 million.
Because
it was $22 million.
Okay, 22.
$22 million. So it's still a considerable amount.
That is a considerable amount considering something like Krull costs like $40-50.
Yeah, it made $17 million, which distinguishes it as a bomb, and it was. It opened at number 3. Not a lot of love shown to He-Man, unfortunately, that summer.
It happens. It happens to the best of them.
Exactly. And henceforth, Gary Goddard has not directed another movie since.
You're kidding.
He has not. No. He's made his career designing theme park attractions. And I'm not talking about like roller coasters or anything. No, he designed and shot the pre-ride footage for T2, 3D Battle Across Time. Jurassic Park, the ride.
Nice.
He did the Star Trek experience in Vegas.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's how he's made his name, and
that Star Trek experience was heavily advertised when I was younger.
Absolutely, and he's very accomplished at doing kind of fantasy and also doing story choreography. So you could imagine, he's a perfect guy to make Masters of the Universe, and I don't think he did a bad job.
No, he didn't.
I really don't think he did a bad job. I think he did absolutely best for what he had, and that wasn't a lie. I mean, he had a lead actor who couldn't speak English. He had to do He-Man on a budget, He-Man on Earth. I've looked at the original Dave Odell script, and had they produced that, they still did He-Man on Earth, but there was a lot more Eternia in it. Mm-hmm. It was very heavily Eternia. Snake Mountain was in it.
Yeah.
Panther was in it. Mm-hmm. I think the Snake Men were in it. Yeah. And they also did something that was almost seems like an obvious. Why they did not keep this in this movie, I don't know. Maybe they just didn't think Dolph could handle this kind of material. But they were going to make the connection that He-Man is half human. That his mother, and this is how it was in the cartoon, it was, in fact, from Earth. And they were going to deal with that.
That I did not know.
And why they didn't keep it in the movie.
They should have kept that. That would have been awesome.
It would have made it more about He-Man.
Exactly.
Again, maybe there was other circumstances.
But I think when you're put under the gun and you're just given all sorts of, like, every day's a crisis...
will we have money to shoot today?
Will we have the special effect in time? Will we have this? And, that's why, as much as I love canon films, I will say I wouldn't work for them.
No, I mean, because it depends on when you are. If you're a first-time director, you want to, start paying your dues and, get your freshman movie out there. Maybe canon's not a bad way to go. Would I make a career there? No. Would I have a successful career and then go to them? Absolutely not. They destroyed more careers than they made some.
Now, I will say this was supposed to have a sequel.
It was.
And they were starting to make costumes and sets for it. And when the movie didn't do so well, they just took all that stuff and put it for Cyborg.
Yeah, absolutely. They. I think what it was. They didn't want to pay for Mattel's fees for production. Like, they didn't want to renew, I guess, their license or...
Gee, I wonder why. Maybe because Canon was actually going to have to, make the movie.
But, as much as I would love to see a sequel to this, or would have loved to see a sequel for this, and come on, Skeletor promises us at the end. For those
I'll be back.
Yeah, exactly. For those who love all the Marvel Cinematic Universe post-cred, Masters of the Universe is the one that started it all.
Yep.
There's a post-cred of, spoiler alert, I already gave the movie away earlier in the podcast, but the ending resolves itself by He-Man knocking Skeletor into a bottomless pit. Mm-hmm. I guess it's not bottomless because at the end we see it's like a pit of goo or acid or something like that. Some kind of vat.
After pulling a Superman the movie.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And Skeletor pops out of the water... And he says, I'll be back. And he promises a sequel that never came to fruition.
I think that's the only thing that bugs me.
Yeah. Where's our sequel?
No, not only that, but I think one of the other things that bugs me is the whole, resolution of the Courtney Cox and her boyfriend ending, where it's like, okay, we're going to send you back now, and they send him back. And it's right before, because, so we find out that Courtney Cox's parents died in a plane crash.
Right.
And she's going to move, and she's not going to finish high school. And
yeah, her character arc is that she blames herself for her parents getting into a plane crash, and she's going to move away, break up with her boyfriend, but that's when her and her boyfriend find the cosmic key, the one that He-Man and all the others are looking for. And so they help He-Man and the rest get back to Eternia.
Yeah. So when they do that and they help him out, good journey. They send him back, and then they send him back before the parents even left on their plane, and they prevent, and they both know, oh, that was a great adventure. And I'm just kind of like, did they just pull a Superman the movie and just spin the world backwards?
Yeah, they did.
So does that mean everything that happened prior to this movie, everything that happened during the movie
didn't happen, or did it happen? Yet they still have the memory of it happening.
And then they have the little snow globe thing.
I would say it's
I have the power.
I would say it's a more of a Back to the Future ending where you're altering your present, And but with that being said, talking Back to the Future and the space-time continuum, it makes absolutely no sense.
Exactly.
Because if you're talking that way, are they going back? Okay. So that means, is there 2 Courtney Coxes? Or, and how would Gwildor know that's the precise moment? Did she tell him? Because they don't really explain it.
Maybe it's just like a
Did she...
thing.
Well, maybe.
Maybe it's like you think it
Gwildor's
and you're there.
Gwildor's a magic man. And by the way, we didn't talk about Gwildor yet.
No.
Gwildor, a lot of people have a problem with. Again, this podcast mainly is like the list of problems for Masters of the Universe. And we're trying to answer for them, so to speak. Or at least give some kind of explanation.
Gwildor is the unused Ewok.
No, Gwildor is the Orko replacement.
And he's a better replacement.
Well, I mean, you can argue who's a better character, Gwildor or Orko. I think everybody's going to say Orko is better because, enthusiasts are enthusiasts.
No.
But
Gwildor is a better character.
But I ask you this. How can you do Orko, especially in 1987, with canon films? I mean, right now you can do them, sure. You can do anything that plugs into a computer.
Yeah.
But... I mean, to have a flying mystical wizard around you, kind of like Gazoo.
Plus, Gwildor is cute. I mean, he's that cute little lovable sidekick that you all want in your fantasy movie.
A lot of people have a problem with Gwildor.
Well,
I mean, and they try to make him a part of the universe, so to speak, by giving him an action figure and tying into the movie. But, Gwildor, he's under that list of characters that they invented for the movie when they have a whole roster of characters they did not use.
Well, to be fair, they had a whole roster of characters they could use, but because, to be honest, I don't think with the makeup or anything else like that, they could have pulled them off.
Here's the thing. The characters they did use, Skeletor, Evelyn, and Beastman.
And Blade.
Blade was not a part of the series.
Oh, I thought
Blade was on that list with Gwildor as a new invented character. But you got the 3 who were a part of the entire Masters of the Universe legacy. And they're done well. I mean, Beastman isn't so much the Igor to Skeletor as he is just kind of a henchman. But I don't see the issue with that. I kind of thought Beastman was annoying in the cartoon.
Well, Beastman was always... This is coming from someone who somewhat knows. But... he just, like, Beastman's a beast. He's like the Hulk with fur. What else can you do, really? It's... he's the Hulk with fur, and you just kind of... There's only so much you can do with a budget. And at the same time, there's only so much you can do in one film. The problem I have now with I'm gonna bring this back now to here, to here, is everything is getting thrown at you at once nowadays. Like, if a movie is based on a property, everybody's got to be happy. The audience has to be happy. The fans have to be happy. So they throw everything at you, including the kitchen sink, including everything else that's in the house, and it just doesn't work. Like, I heard that, and I haven't seen this, but I'm gonna... Tiny spoiler. But I guess in the Gem movie, they tease the rival band. They tease one of the rival bands that was in the show, and it's like, just be concerned with making one movie. Don't be concerned about how many others you're going to make afterwards. Like, if this movie was made today, which they're trying to do...
They did make a Gem movie, didn't they?
They did make a Gem movie.
I forgot about that.
That came out last year. They're throwing everything at you at once. So if this movie gets made today, it
will be. Whoever does it, it's going to be remade today.
Well, the person they're talking to make it, we won't... All right, can I just touch on this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just going to use Mark Kermode's impersonation. So the person they want to get is McG. They want to get McG to make this movie. They want to get, the man who brought us Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, Terminator Salvation.
Oh, God.
3 Days to Kill.
Well, I'm maintaining optimism because as this podcast is being recorded, it hasn't been officialized yet.
It's just talking.
Hopefully it just stays as talking.
Please stay just talking.
Because him doing a Masters of the Universe movie, I would rather see the sequel that wasn't made, that was supposed to be done by Albert Pune.
Yeah.
I mean, where
Skeletor...
I
would rather watch Gem. I would rather watch Gem.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking.
I cannot sit through another movie by McG.
No,
You know,
I don't support that at all. But you know what? A Masters of the Universe movie would absolutely play today. With how much everybody loves superheroes and crossed universes and fantasy
and retro stuff
and retro 80s is huge right now. We have 5 Transformer movies, or soon to be 5. You can give us one Masters of the Universe, and you can do it by a capable filmmaker, a competent one.
Not McG?
Not McG. I have a lot of problems with McG.
Actually, well, that brings up an interesting question. Who would you hire?
To make a Masters of the Universe movie?
Yeah.
It's a great question, actually. I don't know, honestly. I remember back in the day, they were going to make a remake toward the early 2000s when they were trying to do that kind of resurgence with a new cartoon series and a new toy line, which weren't that bad. It took the character a little bit more seriously. In fact, I think that cartoon was more similar to the movie, the 87 Dolph Lundgren movie, than the 80s cartoon was. But John Woo was going to do it. I remember everyone got excited about that.
John Woo, the master of doves and extreme action sequences, and
so you would have He-Man slay Skeletor, and then all of a sudden doves fall out of the sword of Grayskull.
Wait. Nicolas Cage as He-Man.
Oh, come on.
John Travolta as Skeletor.
Sorry, Face Off. Yeah, I would actually probably reverse that. John Travolta as He-Man and Nicolas Cage as Skeletor.
That's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a terrible idea, but we're going to end it there.
I mean, who would I... God, that's a toughie. Who would you hire to, you gotta think fantasy. I mean,
maybe not who would you hire to direct it. Who would you cast as He-Man and Skeletor? If you say Chris Hemsworth, I'm going to brain you.
Why are you going to brain me?
One, he's already a muscle-bound hero of the fantasy world. He's Thor.
And the Huntsman.
And he would pretty much play the part of He-Man as such. It's too obvious, put it that way.
Henry Cavill?
Superman, so you would put the new Superman in the new He-Man. I think we're reusing actors too much.
Okay,
in today's cinemas, they use the same stable of people for very similar roles.
Okay, so muscle-bound, Adonis-like figure.
I'm going to answer it with how I always answer it.
Channing Tatum.
Channing Tatum? He was Duke. He's already in his toy franchise.
Yeah.
I'm going to say what I always say when it comes to, who should be who. Go with the unknowns.
Okay.
It is so much better to go with the unknowns.
But get somebody good, get a known for the villain.
Yes. Yeah, save the villain role for the...
Jeremy Irons as Skeletor.
That would be pretty sick, honestly. I think I would totally get behind that.
Scar as Skeletor? Perfect.
Sign me up.
I would definitely... let's see. Who would you get to play... Who would you get to play Beastman?
I don't know. Some unknown muscle-bound freak. I don't know. Anyway, using this platform to segue to another point I want to make, a lot of today contemporary movies borrow a lot from Masters of the Universe 1987. I kind of hinted to that toward the beginning of the podcast, but let's just talk about some of them, shall we? Thor being the obvious one. We already went into Thor. But how about Smurfs? There's a lot of elements in Smurfs that are completely lifted from this movie. Almost any fish out of water movie, when you're dealing with other beings from other dimensions or worlds or planets, whatever.
I hate you.
They always have something that kind of goes back to Masters of the Universe.
I hate you, sir.
No, nobody likes the Smurfs movie. That's not the point I'm saying.
No, all I'm getting now I'm going to have to think about, when I think of Masters of the Universe, I'm going to have to think about the Smurfs.
No, you don't have to. You can think about Masters of the Universe when you're thinking about the Smurfs. You can do it the other way around.
Okay, I could do that, but still, ugh. Okay, moving on. Smurfs or...
Yeah, point being is, for such a bad movie, how come...
Beastmaster 2.
There you go. Almost
Suburban Commando.
There you go. I'm not saying that these are particularly good movies. I don't think any of them were good movies.
Look, Beastmaster 2 and Suburban Commando. Eons better than the fucking Smurfs. Pardon my language.
I don't know about Beastmasters 2, but I found Suburban Commando funny. I enjoyed that.
Shep Ramsey,
Hulk Hogan. who probably would have been up for He-Man
and one of the
back
best
in the day.
and one of the best uses of the Undertaker. Why? Just because they decided to give him. It's like
yeah. We're talking too much about Suburban Commander now. We're supposed to be talking about Masters of the Universe.
I mean, to be fair, okay, so yeah, a lot of it borrows from it, but at the same time, I mean, we've done the reverse. A hero from Earth goes to a fantastical planet and saves the day. John Carter, Flash Gordon. What other ones are like that?
Would you say Jupiter Ascending?
Yeah,
to a degree.
Yeah, I would say that.
To a degree.
Jupiter Ascending did that. And actually they did the reverse as well. Alien comes to Earth, saves the day, and then, they did a back and forth treatment. We stayed on Earth, had a couple battle sequences here, and then we went to the fantastical planet.
There you go.
And then, in terms of Masters of the Universe, kind of getting back on point, is that, at least Masters of the Universe based on 80s cartoon, it works.
I think it works too.
It works, because you look at some of these other movies that are based on 80s cartoons and based on 80s properties, they just don't work in today. Like, I've heard nothing but contempt for the Gem and the Holograms movie. I've heard it's just
they're trying to greenlight all these other toy properties. I guess you would say they're up to Transformers 5. We know that they've done a couple GI Joes. Stretch Armstrong's been in development for a long time,
which isn't gonna work.
No, I mean, He-Man obviously is right on track to be made something.
But getting my point, it's that you can only do it. The property has to fit the screen, if you know what I mean. Like you can't just take every single toy property, cartoon property, put it on the big screen and say, hey, there you go. It doesn't work. He-Man works, Masters of the Universe works as a big screen movie because there's a lot to work with. There's a huge, there's a whole planet, there's Castle's Grayskull, there's,
But there lies the problem, no? I mean, they have a lot to work with, but they don't use it because they can't. You know what I mean? And for what they could use versus what they couldn't use, they made do with what they had. And that's why I can say that I don't mind the movie for what it is because I understand what they had. I guess you could say, well, I don't want to pay for a movie that gives me something as flimsy as He-Man on Earth and having the plot revolve more around the villains than the actual title character.
But that's the 80s fanboy talking.
Exactly. That's the person with nostalgia goggles on. And it's just bad timing and bad decisions and bad circumstances just all went into this movie because when it was finally released in August of '87, He-Man was all but gone. The toys weren't on the shelves anymore. The series wasn't on TV anymore. This was their last and boldest attempt to rejuvenate a franchise. It
just went.
Exactly. It was just gone, and it happens.
But you need that to happen. I think some of the I'm not going to call Masters of the Universe one of the greatest movies of all time.
Neither would I, but I would call it a good movie.
But it is a good movie, and one of the not all great movies have to do great at the box office. It's just all about that finding it through the rubble and finding it in passing away all the
But the problem with that is the people who find this movie are mostly fanboys. Kind of like us, and they are the ones that don't look at it any other ways than how they want to see it.
I'm not a fanboy of He-Man, so I look at it as a movie.
Exactly,
so, and I didn't grow. I will gladly say that I didn't grow up. I was a '90s kid. I didn't grow up on He-Man. I didn't grow up on the new series. This has literally been my only exposure to the character. It was until after that I did all the research.
Same with me. Same with me. I mean, I knew the cartoon, I knew the toys, but it was the movie.
And the cartoon, I'm sorry, is like uber silly.
It's very
fabulous secrets were held.
It's very wholesome, and they tried to make a movie that would appeal to both kids and adult, and I think they succeeded on most levels.
Yeah,
not all. As I said before, there are many problems with this movie. Mm-hmm. Be it that Dolph Lundgren is pretty much a characterless Hulk of a He-Man, And
but that's He-Man in general.
And then I will admit that the best parts of the movie are when they are in Eternia.
Yeah.
So, not all the things when they're on Earth are bad, but some of them are a little silly. The biggest scene I have a problem with this movie is the music shop battle. It's really kind of what this is the best you could come up with.
I was going to say one of my favorite scenes is when you got Man-in-Arms, Gwildor, and
the fried chicken scene.
Yeah, the fried chicken
scene.
And they're like, "You're eating animal? Yeah, animal tastes good." And they're just like,
yeah. So are you trying to tell us that all Eternians are vegetarians? That's odd because most of them are barbarians and warriors. You think they would eat whatever they can.
Exactly. And not only that, but then you have, it's like they first land on Earth, it's like, it's a life form. It could be dangerous.
And it's a cow. There's a lot of lowbrow humor with it.
It is, and I like that lowbrow humor. One of the problems I have with the movie, one of the biggest issues is when He-Man or the bad guy isn't there, it's dull. You know, like, I like Courtney Cox and I like the other guy, but when they're talking about, it's like, oh, it's not your fault. Oh, you're going to see my last show. Oh, listen to this, cute little synth beat. I'm just kind of like, can we get back to the He-Man on that?
Well, I think that a lot of the issues go with that is that the movie has a hard time trying to stay focused. Mm-hmm. Like, who are we supposed to follow during this movie? Are we supposed to follow He-Man and his band of soldiers?
Changed.
Exactly. Or is it Skeletor's story? Is it about how a fascist ruler comes into power?
It's like you're watching this great big fantasy movie, so he changes the channel to Lifetime.
Exactly. Exactly. Then you get this like weird teen drama that predates Dawson's Creek, where it's all about
I know your parents died, but I'm here for you.
Which isn't really what you think of when you think of a He-Man
movie.
If
you caught those parts. If you were flipping through channels, Masters of the Universe, and you were watching just those parts, you changed the channel after 10 minutes.
But again, that's not saying that Courtney Cox did a particularly bad job.
She did.
She did what she worked with what she was given. What she was given was teen drama interweaved with He-Man.
Yeah.
And I think what they were really trying to do was they were trying to do kind of like a reverse Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Instead of a girl going to a mystical land, it was the mystical land coming to the girl. You know what I mean?
And then her temporarily going to the mystical land and then coming back home.
Exactly. and you kind of have, especially you have that goodbye scene, which that is clearly the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Where, everyone's saying goodbye and I'll miss you most of all, He-Man.
Good journey.
Good journey, exactly.
We don't say goodbye, we say good journey.
Good journey. It's an old Eternian saying, live the journey.
Meanwhile, while Skeletor's still following.
Yeah, Skeletor's well, it's not a bottomless pit, I guess. It's a pit of red, smoky water. And he won't be back, unfortunately. But you know what? We will be back.
We will
be back with another podcast, ending our Masters of the Universe podcast. Again, this movie has a lot of issues. A lot of things are going wrong, but there are things that are going right.
But it's so much fun. Please give it a rent. It's on Netflix streaming right now. Go watch it.
There is a lot of good to this movie. There's a lot more beneath the surface, I think, than people want to give it credit for. So, what can I say? But I love this movie.
I like it too.
Exactly.
I don't know if I love it, but I like it too.
I love this movie, and I'm not afraid, so I'm getting off my soapbox now, and I'm going to tell you guys, if you guys want to hit us up with any requests, any particular canon films you want to have us talk about or address, you can log them onto our email. That's mastersofboogaloo@gmail.com. Also, we have our Facebook page up and running, Facebook/Canon Podcast. Hit us up. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Thank you for listening. For Aaron M. Lambert,
Kyle Patrick Murphy signing off.
Good journey.
I'll be back. No! We're Canon Films, and we're dynamite.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Masters of Boogaloo, the podcast show that looks at the schlocking world of canon films. I'm your host, Aaron M. Lambert, and with me, of course, he is the Golan to my Globus.
Kyle Patrick Murphy here.
All right, we got a good episode today, don't we? I've been waiting to do this episode since we started this podcast.
Oh, you have?
Yes. We are going to talk about one of the epitome canon films, the one that's still remembered to this day, 1987's epic Masters of the Universe. That's right, the He-Man movie they produced in 87 that was supposed to save the company and unfortunately did not. And I got a bit of a confession to make. I'm gonna come clean about this. I'm gonna get on my soapbox and announce to the world, I love this movie. I seriously love this movie, and anybody who knows me knows I love this movie, and I defend it tooth and nail that it is, in fact, a good movie. I'm aware of the problems. There are a key, and with this cosmic key, they travel to Earth. Again, here's the problem with the movie that a lot of people have with it, and I guess I do to some degree too. So on Earth, they lose the cosmic key to get back to Eternia. They have to find it before Skeletor does, and then when they get back to Eternia, pretty much ending of he saves the day, he saves Grayskull, defeats Skeletor, the end. Good journey. So with
Once
that,
again, you said that so eloquently.
well, yeah, you know, hey, you gotta
Eloquently.
you gotta go through these movies so people know what you're talking about. But I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you know what we're talking about.
I think if you've seen any of the amount of like 80s resurgence lately, you've at least heard about Masters of the Universe once.
And it's either like that movie that was so bad it's good, or just so bad it's bad.
Well, that was normal for science fiction fantasy movies of the 80s. I mean, look at Last Starfighter.
Right.
Kid from Earth goes to space and, defeats the bad alien race, and that was the first use of CGI in a film. Or one of the first major uses. There were a few usages before that, but you had that, you had Krull, you had, what else? Willow. It was a
fad.
It was a big thing to do fantasy movies with kind of an 80s.
With the first one.
The first one, and considering we've had some bad action figure and board game based movies since then. I'm sorry, I'd rather watch Masters of the Universe over Ouija and Transformers and G.I. Joe Rise of the Cobra.
Toys and board games are so in now. They're, I wouldn't say as big as comic book movies, but they're trying to capture the same.
They're making a movie based on trolls.
It's the geek culture they're trying to take on, and Masters of the Universe was the first, I guess, action figure movie based on. There was the animated series that was very popular in the early '80s,
and there was the animated film. I think it was like He-Man and She-Ra: Secret of the Sword.
Yeah, and they also had like Christmas specials and stuff like that.
Special.
And I got to tell you, growing up, I liked the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon. As a younger viewer, I liked it. But I got to tell you, my access to He-Man was always this movie.
Yeah.
It was this, and I had a couple of those golden books or read-along books or whatever.
Yeah.
And had Masters of the Universe. I also had a couple of comics. I had the toys.
Yeah.
To say that it's such a bad movie, which most people do, it's such a bad movie, and yet I'm constantly seeing people ripping it off.
Exactly.
To this day, a lot of people just take inspiration from this movie. And I'm like, and if it's such a bad flick, well, why are you even bothering?
If it's such a bad movie, then how come when I was sitting in the movie theater watching Thor, the first Thor movie, all I could think of is, wow, this is a high-budget Masters of the Universe.
Pretty much. It was Masters of the Universe done on a budget it was supposed to be done under. Maybe not as high, considering 80s dollars versus now.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said about this movie. Basic plot is it's a good versus evil story. You have Skeletor who succeeds in taking over Castle Grayskull, and this is like the first 5 minutes of the movie. He's won, which I like in regards to watching the cartoon episodes where it was always they were very formula. It was there's He-Man, there's Skeletor. Skeletor's trying to take over the world or take over Castle Grayskull, Eternia, what have you. He-Man stops him. The end. We'll win to fight you another day. I'll get you next time, He-Man.
I'll get you next time, Gadget.
So you start off this movie, and he's won. He's done that. He's taken over Eternia. He's taken over Castle Grayskull. He's got the Sorceress of Grayskull, who's pretty much, I guess, a god to the Eternians.
Yeah.
She's in his power field. He's sucking her energy. He's about to become ruler of the universe. Then you got He-Man, who's leading a band of rebel, I guess, warriors, a little bit like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because you got Tila, you got Man-at-Arms. They're trying to stop Skeletor. They come across an inventor, Willowdor, who creates cosmetics. There are a lot of them, and but I really don't think that it's worth calling it a bad movie over. I think it's a movie that had a lot of bad things happen to it, but that's almost every canon movie out there. This was a very big movie for me growing up. There was 2 canon movies that were very important to my formative years. It was Masters of the Universe and the other one I'll talk about in another show. I'll keep it a secret for
I know
now.
what it is.
Yes, you know what it is, but don't spoil it, because we will get to that movie where I will get on my soapbox again, but defend it for different reasons. This movie, as I said, came out in 1987, and it was supposed to be the movie that helped save the company. Am I right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be.
Yeah, 1987, we saw Over the Top. That was supposed to save the company. We've talked about Over the Top before. We saw Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and we had Masters of the Universe, and it was supposed to be the year of canon because they were going through their biggest financial difficulties at the time, and they needed these movies to help save the company, and unfortunately, did not happen.
Not so much.
No. But does that make Masters of the Universe a bad movie?
No.
Like in your opinion, do you consider it a bad movie?
Do I consider it a bad movie? No. I mean, compared to... let's compare... it is an action figure-based movie, and considering